Get started. Good evening, everyone. I'm Megan Rust, educator for interpretation at the Frist Art Museum. As we are getting started and you all are joining and settling in for a great conversation, I'd like to begin with a few acknowledgements. Thank you all for joining us for today's conversation with We Count artists Jerry Bedor Phillips, Vesna Pavlović, and Shaun Giles. We'll begin with the land acknowledgement. The Frist Art Museum's building sits on land that Cherokee and Shawnee native peoples and elders call their homeland. We acknowledge and pay respect to them. We also acknowledge and offer deep gratitude to the ancestral land and water that support us. Today's conversation is presented in conjunction with the exhibition, We Count First-Time Voters. The exhibition was organized by the Frist Art Museum and is on view on our website at fristartmuseum.org/WeCount and opens in our Conte Community Arts Gallery next week on Friday, July 31st. We would like to thank the sponsors of We Count First-Time Voters. Presenting sponsor, HCA Foundation, on behalf of HCA TriStar Health. The exhibition is supported in part by Ryman Hospitality Properties Foundation, Neal and Harwell PLC, and O'Keefe Circle members. As always, we appreciate the continuing support from the Metro Nashville Arts Commission, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Throughout the conversation this evening, we'll take questions from the audience. Please submit your questions via the Q&A feature anytime throughout the presentation. And thank you in advance for your patience with us as we present this program online. In the event of a technical difficulty, we'll pause the presentation and we'll work quickly to resolve the issue. If you're having technical difficulties on your personal device or have questions about using Zoom, please use the chat feature to send a message to Frist IT. And now it's my pleasure to turn things over to the Frist Assistant Director of Community Engagement, Shaun Giles, We Count artist Jerry Bedor Phillips, and Vesna Pavlović, one of the community members Jerry interviewed while creating work for this exhibition. Please join me in welcoming them.
All right, thank you all for being with us this evening. Thanks, Megan. And thanks, Jerry and Vesna, for kind of being part of this conversation. This exhibition, We Count First-Time Voters, was really exciting for me to work on and be able to kind of oversee the process. Jerry is one of the 5 artists whose work is on view in the exhibition. He and the other artists were invited to take part, and as part of that process, he spoke with, he and the other artists spoke with Nashvillians about their first-time voting experiences, as well as their experiences navigating some of those processes to become voters. So many of those obstacles they had to deal with include coming to the United States as immigrants and having to gain citizenship, or growing up in a newly integrated Nashville. And many of these stories really came together very well for this show. So as a response, artists created works of art inspired by those stories. So this evening, we'll hear a little bit more about that from Jerry and Vesna. Jerry actually spoke with 4 Nashvillians, and Vesna was one of them. So we're really looking forward to a chance to talk a little bit about that. But I'll kick it off with a question for Jerry. And Jerry, I'll just let you kind of tell us what made you want to participate in this project, and why was it relevant for you personally?
First and foremost, I don't get invitations to be a part of a art project of this caliber very often. It's very rare. So a lot of what I've been taught in school and from my parents is if there's an opportunity that comes your way, you should just take it. So I was like, yes, I will take it. And then learning about the theme of and the importance of voting, that really took an inner sort of dialogue I had to have to myself, like why is voting important to me? And it all comes back to my parents and their immigrant story of coming to America and realizing that only one of my parents can legally vote in elections. It's my dad who got his citizenship after recently joining, not recently, but shortly after he joined the military. So my mom, who's very active politically, she's aware of the political news that's current, but just knowing that she can't voice her opinions and affect an election with her knowledge and her observations is kind of sad. And sad for me knowing that like she is like the pinnacle of who I would want to be as a voter, like someone who's actively engaged, someone who's informed, and someone who lets her decisions always be a positive effect on others. So hopefully, as an adult, I'll live up to that expectation.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you work personally as an artist, just generally what you do, but then tell us a little bit about the specific process that you went through for this project.
It is. Okay. All right. We'll talk tomorrow. Thanks. Okay, bye. Bye.
Hi, Anne. Normally in my studio, I make work about my thoughts and my opinions, my observations of my family and how I relate to them as someone who was born in America and pretty much only knows how to be an American. So I'm trying to figure out how to bridge the gaps between what I think of myself as a person and who my family expects me to be through cultural influences or whatnot. Apparently, I come from a very influential family in Palau. So there's a lot of writing on where I feel like there's a lot on my shoulders to be the best version of the family and represent the family well, even though I haven't been to the island since kindergarten, which is like over 30 years ago, which is something that Vesna keeps bringing up since I've known her. I don't know, since 2012. Like, when are you going to the islands? I'm like, good question, Vesna. Maybe not during a pandemic. They're right now at 0% confirmed cases of COVID, so I don't want to jeopardize that. Plus, they're not allowing anybody to visit. So hopefully after the pandemic, and they'll see this program, they'll see the work that I'm making, and they'll be like, hey, come make work about us. Come listen to our actual stories that we can tell you in person. So hopefully this is like a bridge for me as well as people who see the work to Palau, where my family's from. But in contrast, the project was great because it just got me out of my inner head. I got to make work about somebody else, which is not something that I normally do. It was a challenge because I would try to think of their stories from their perspective, which is impossible because I haven't experienced it. But the challenge was great. It was kind of liberating. Like it made me come to the studio for like 12 hours a day. It made me focused. It's something that maybe I need to consider affecting and putting into effect my regular studio practice for my own work. So it's not like my work isn't as important, but it should be held to that same importance as if I'm making work for somebody else.
And I don't want to dominate the conversation, so y'all can feel free to jump in whenever, but I do have a question for Vesna, just to kind of bring you in. So what made you want to share your story specifically for this project?
Thank you, Shaun. Well, thank you, Megan and Jerry, for inviting me to participate in the Frist, which I think of my house, my place in town. I have, Jerry is my colleague and a friend. We work together at Vanderbilt Department of Art. I have known Jerry's work and have seen Jerry's work in other exhibitions, and most recently at Montgomery Bell Academy, where he presented, it was a larger exhibition, but what was for me very striking at that exhibition was his use of archival images. So in drawings and prints, he finds photographs and works with imagery that is very evocative. And Jerry is right. I often think about Palau and when is Jerry going to Palau, and sort of it's in my mind that campaign needs to happen sometimes. So there is a connection because in my work I often look into archives and representation and what it means, and so I know how important is the personal history to Jerry in his work and the imagery of his family, and I see that in other bodies of work that he has done. So when Jerry invited me to have a conversation with him about my immigrant experience, I was happy to share a few stories and a few passports that I brought with me at that meeting, because I come from Serbia, the former Yugoslavia, former Socialist Republic of Yugoslavia, Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, former Serbia and Montenegro, former. So as the country has gone through its different iterations and histories, so have my passports. And then to that addition of a few passports, I've added the American passport. So it was interesting to remember some of these stories with Jerry and to have a conversation and to think about the importance of the exhibition that you put up together and that Jerry is participating in.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about you, Vesna. We've alluded to the fact that you're an immigrant and now a citizen of the United States, but let's go back to your time in Serbia, and specifically your life as a student, as a photographer, living in the 90s under the Slobodan Milosevic regime.
Mm-hmm. That sort of seems like, oh, it was so long ago that I've blocked some of those memories. But I have had a chance to think about some of the times of the 1990s in 2018, as I've started looking back into the archives of my black and white photography and the documentary work that I have done in as working in the 1990s Yugoslavia. So I studied cinematography. So for me, photography came first, and then came cinematography and film. And but as I was finishing my studies, there was the country has entered entered wars actually in 91. It was the war in Croatia, and then shortly after, a war in Bosnia, and then in 99 with Kosovo. And it's interesting that actually one of your artists in the show is doing a story about the immigrant from Kosovo who left in 99, which is exactly when I was there and taking pictures during that war. So I worked so for me it was easier the film production was not super strong at the time. So I went back to photography and started working with different non-for-profit organizations and groups such as Women in Black, different other artist groups that I've collaborated with the writer, actually, Srđan Valjarević. For me, working as a photographer at that time was the way to go through wars, through maintain my sanity and to really respond to war in different means, sort of not being a photographer who is on the front line, but really talking about the life of the city and what is happening in the city, and trying to do that in poetic ways and using documentary photography. One such project was with Shkart Art Group, artist collective that I was a member of, in which we used the radio, B92, which had a big outreach and was the opposition radio at the time. Now it's not anymore because things change. So that's probably the most important thing to be aware of, to really maintain some sort of focus on the democratic processes. So we've as a member of that collective, we've printed small cardboard poems that we've read on public radio as some sort of a media actions. Then we distributed them to people on streets, and it was a moment when everybody was taking away from people, so people were really surprised to get a gift. And that's like a really small cardboard poem printed with the help of friends. And I remember to print a whole edition of small artist books was 50 German marks at that time. But anyway, we gave it, and I photographed these actions, and then we later on published photography posters, put those on the city. So we've engaged as artists and citizens with the city in the ways that we could, and we formed partnerships, and we formed friendships actually with different groups and amongst each other. So for me to work with Women in Black, a feminist pacifist organization who was protesting war and the regime of Slobodan Milošević, and war at any rate, was also meant also to be a friend. And so I've gotten film from them, from the International Women Network. So it was really a moment of big solidarity amongst people who decided to stay in the country when hundreds of thousands of people have left. So it was a moment, so for me it was a voice. And then in 2018, when I sort of went back to this archive in preparation for this exhibition at Mixtape at Zeitgeist Gallery, I actually looked into those times and years and realized that the idea of a protest and the idea of remembering what some of the priorities are was important and remains important to and is a universal thing. And so I connect that by working on that exhibition. I think about the protest, I think about resistance, I think about focus on the democratic processes, and connect that to the current political climate that we are in. So yeah, that's for the somewhat an answer. But
That's great, thank you. And again, you're welcome to chime in if either of you have anything to add or any questions. So, Vesna, you talk about that experience. So, at what point did you decide to immigrate to the United States?
So I have so my story was that I've applied for a green card lottery, and I got it. so I was sort of taken out of a hat, and so then in 98, 1998 was the first time I came with my green card, which wasn't the first time I came to United States. It was actually 96 as a part of a Arts Festival of Atlanta, like an exhibition, actually with the Shkart Art Group. And so, but yeah, in 98, and that some of the provisions of the green card required me to spend time, 6 months or so in the United States at least. And so I have traveled a lot for a lot of years between United States and Serbia, and I have actually had encounters on all borders and getting my stamps in these passports and worrying about being asked when was the last time you left the country. And so I tried to be diligent. At that time, I have started my somewhat early 2000s was the moment when I actually started also to create connections with different galleries and art organizations and residency programs. And so I did, in fact, and indeed spend time in the United States. And it took a while for me to actually renew, and I have renewed that green card again, because I felt for me it was important to I started the graduate program in 2005 in Columbia University, so which gave me like my first big lease. so then, you know, like there are all these provisions and so yeah, so it took a while. It took me 20 years actually, maybe a little less, to almost 20 years. But I know that I was in a big rush to become a citizen during the Obama administration, and that actually happened. My interviews were happening as I have applied, but I guess my swearing in the courthouse happened the day before the inauguration of Trump. So President Trump. So I actually was very kind of trying to not that I was afraid that something would go wrong, although you can never tell, but I actually was very, for the sake of symbolic energy, wanted to become a citizen. And I did actually get a package and a signature from Obama in my folder when I came home. So that made me very happy.
So Vesna, you kind of talk about the uncertainty of being an immigrant and having to have all of your visa in order and your paperwork. And you shared a story with Jerry about your time when you were an artist in residence in 2006 in Finland, and you traveled on what seemed like a short day trip with your husband and your then 6-month-old son. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so that's the story that actually inspired Jerry, and it would be nice, Jerry, to maybe see that.
Oh yeah, I can. Let me go ahead and screen share. I was so engrossed in the conversation, I completely forgot to say, "Hey, should I screen share?"
Yeah. So there was it's a story. So in 2006, while I was a graduate student, and Luke was a young baby, 6-month-old baby, he and I traveled to Suomenlinna Island, which is a beautiful island, and it was this Balkan artist in residency program. And at that time, I had only my Serbian passport, and I had a sort of a one-time entry Schengen visa to enter Finland. When we went, Luke has his American passport because he was born in New York, and so we came, and then Hadley, my husband, who is American, he came to visit, and so we were interested in taking this ferry ride, as you can see on the screen, to Tallinn for a day. And so we set up on a day trip. It's about it's across the canal. It's really a short ride, and we came there, and then I didn't have the appropriate visa in my passport. Actually, I couldn't get into into Estonia because I only had a single entry visa.
Mm-hmm.
And so for Luke and Hadley, that was you know, sort of since they had American passports and they could enter, but I was on the ferry, and so then we were all on the ferry. So we couldn't so we had to take the ferry back to Finland. And so we went back to Finland, and on the entrance to the Finnish border, they wouldn't let me in because I only had a single entry visa in my passport, so I couldn't re-enter again because I left the country to go on this day trip ferry ride. so anyway, so it was actually, I felt like, so then in the end they have canceled that visa and issued me a new visa so that I can enter the country again. So a ton of bureaucracy, a ton of like, but just understanding that some passports or some citizenship, some were valid more than others, and that actually you had to worry about visas constantly. And that story about visas stayed with me sort of like a nightmare of the 1990s, because you had to really apply for all these visas all the time. And I have, I don't know if I can share a screen, Jerry, to show a photo.
Sure.
Oh, okay, great. Then can I share screen? Oh yeah. So I have this photo that I wanted to show. Can people see it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So these are the lines of people waiting for German visa in front of the German consulate in the 1990s. And actually this photograph is taken right next to the Center for Cultural Decontamination that I was working for as a documentary photographer, which was organized and ran for about 10 years. And still ongoing, but I worked for about 10 years there. But you could tell like that people were just like put up in these like guarded off of off of the well, I'll stop sharing, but guarded off of these on the street in order to, so you had to go overnight to wait in the line in order to get a visa to travel. And then even if you had to travel because of the embargo on travel, you had to take a trip, a van or a bus to Budapest, to the nearest airport, and then travel. So in fact, at one point I participated in an exhibition at Zahenta National Gallery of Poland called Travelers. And actually there was an artist, Estonian artist, who did exactly the work about this experience, similar experience about traveling. Actually, it was in the Estonian Kumu Museum when he joined that iteration of the show. And so in Tallinn. And so it's kind of interesting. And I like here looking at Jerry's work, the fact how he rendered that boat story, but there's that the curtains that are sort of up and above, and that curtain, the curtain as a symbol, as much as theatrical it can be, or have that connotation, it also for me specifies, in here seeing it in Jerry's work, looks like a barrier or a boundary or a border. And surely in the for during the time of the Cold War in the country, in Europe, it was the Iron Curtain. It was the clear delineation between the East and the West. And actually it was Winston Churchill who coined the term, the Iron Curtain, in one of his speeches in 1944. Yep. And so seeing these elements of curtains that Jerry sort of included in his work alongside this story kind of gives it a more universal meaning.
Great. So Jerry, this story really seemed to resonate with you. And I'd love to know a little bit more about your process. So we get a glimpse of it here. But yeah, if you want to go into more detail.
About the specific story?
Just about your artistic process.
Oh, okay. We'll go back to the beginning of Vesna's section. So Vesna did a great job, of course, talking about her and explaining her experience and her story. So drawing from all of that and knowing her personally, like that's a lot of information I need to compile. So I sat with her in her studio down in, you can see down here, and she had tea prepared for us. So our conversation was over this wonderful cup of tea, which was very inviting. And thank you so much, Vesna, for that, because that put my nerves to ease when we were talking, because your story is very important. I didn't want to do anything to disrepresent them or disrespect your experience at all. But knowing you since I started working with you, the curtain is an image that you use in your work that I've been drawn to. It's a very dramatic material, and it's also something that I always equate with blocking of light. In a normal, like my bedroom, I have curtains that block light out. So like seeing light pass through images that are on a curtain or a projection of an image on a curtain in your work was something new that changed my perspective on how to look at windows. And windows were also a barrier from the interior to exterior. It's a border, but there's always, you can always open it and to allow flow from both sides. So I started taking photographs. This photograph up here is actually from when I was house sitting for Mel Ziegler, coincidentally, who's also exhibiting at the Frist. It's a beautiful image that I thought portrayed just the division between the outside and the inside, but then the sheer fabric allowed me to kind of see through, and it was like a hopeful image of there's always something on the other side. And then these are just collected images that I was going through a lot of internet searches and then making sure that they were okay to use for creative purposes. So this is a photograph from, I think that is from the night of the election, Vesna, where the students, the youth actually like moved out into the streets after the results.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that particular photo,
Yeah.
but it could be. I mean, I can recognize the street. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was just looking up images of curtains from people posting and lighting, making like looking for curtains with dramatic lighting. I'll ask a question about this image on the bottom right afterwards. I'd love to hear more about that from Vesna. But it was Vesna's story of her naturalization as an American citizen that really kind of enveloped all of it. So thankfully, she let me use photographs from her social media. So this is actually from her naturalization ceremony, the center and the photograph on the right. And I just wanted to pair them with this image from one of the protests, because I think the idea of marching and using her feet with a community of others who were believing in the same future. It's really nice that in her story about her naturalization, the judge actually comments on her son Luke's shoes. So I was like, there's a nice little, oh, you know, like people may not think it's important, but I'm like, oh, well, you know, she's marching here. Maybe not in this photograph, but at that time she was marching with these people, and now she's a citizen. And right after she gets her certificate and gets a picture with the judge comments on the feet of her son, who is an American citizen. I was like, oh, that was just a really wonderful full circle moment for me. So I created the drawings using those photographs that I was collecting and digitally compiling them in Illustrator to create compositions, and then using those compositions to render them in color pencil as a way to kind of unify the look. Since some photographs were more high res than others, I just wanted to have a unified look over the entire drawing, even though these are photographs from different time periods. So this is obviously the same photograph from before, using the curtain. And in my work, it's like Vesna mentioned, it's a barrier, metaphor for a barrier between countries, between existence. This is a drawing about her naturalization ceremony. So a portion of the photograph from her image with the judge and her son, paired with the photograph of the sign directing her to the ceremony, and with the image of the window from Vesna, because that whole story was, to me, about hope, about fulfilling something greater than yourself. And then I had to use an image of our conversation with tea, because that, just having tea with someone, which is there's a cup Vesna's holding up, having tea with someone is something that I don't normally do. Tea is like, I just drink it on the go, but having it there coinciding with a conversation about someone's life, um, there's something very humbling about it. Like, you have to wait for the tea to steep, allows you time for conversation. The warmth of the liquid was felt really fulfilling, I guess. I guess that's the word. Listening to someone talk about their life and then having this sensation of warmth, like literally in my chest. Um, it's a beautiful, like, that's how I can only describe it. So I paired it with a photograph of a curtain that's partially open, sort of like, I wanted to convey like I'm opening a curtain into her life, into her story, and I would like to, as the drawings continue to open that curtain. So this is just another, this is where I was talking about the marching of the feet, paired with images of their feet during the naturalization ceremony, separated by the curtain, but the curtain's illuminated this time. So it's not just a dark physical barrier, there's some light on it that's directing attention to it. And then it ends with the fairy story, because I'm really moved by that, because I was like, when she was talking, I was thinking, like, as a child of immigrants, like I always feel like I'm between two countries or identities. Like, who am I as a Pacific Islander? Who am I as an American? And then like there's me here, and so I think I'm kind of leaning towards the American side because I grew up here and I only speak English, but my parents are constantly speaking Palauan around me, which I'm sad to say I don't retain any of the language. But it's really nice to know that hearing them speak it is comforting. So hearing her story of being literally caught between two countries, I was like, that's kind of what I feel like I've been feeling my entire life. I grew up in Kentucky, but inside our house, like, we had like coconut fish for dinner, and all my friends were like, oh yeah, let's go get like we're gonna go get some pork rinds and really amazing Southern food. But it's like a total juxtaposition of what I was experienced at home and then what I experienced outside in school or with hanging out with my friends. Like, there's this dialogue that was always happening inside me that kind of like was budding with each other. So Vesna's story, even though we're not from, or our origins aren't from the same countries, they're very similar in how we experience life as a human, which was something that, like, I'm thankful I got to sit down and listen to on a more personal level instead of just as colleagues or coworkers. But I'll take you a little tour through this, not a little tour, just images of the process of I was working with while making the drawings. So I used blue color pencil, and there's a shot of all the color pencils I was using. Used quite a bit, and some erasers. And I would literally just tape off a section, and I would work in my studio and just draw. There's a shot of all 20 drawings from the series. Thank you, Betty White, for entertaining me. And a picture of my wall. So I literally sat at this table behind me for 12 hours a day for months sometimes, or for months for 12 hours a day sometimes, drawing. Constantly listening to the interviews with the 4 voices, and trying to keep them in mind as I made the drawings. And then I've also framed them myself, so I just threw that in there.
So why did you decide blue colored pencil?
Oh, blue is a very important color to me. It originates from my family. In Palau, there is the culture is developed around a matrilineal system. So all of our family bloodlines are traced through our mother's side. And part of that is that women had specialized currency in the past, and money beads were one of those currencies. So as a Palawan woman, my mother would have a bead necklace, and so would my sisters. My oldest sister, Malia, her bead was blue. And she is the oldest sibling. She's the one that's looked after me and my younger sister when our parents couldn't, financially or advice wise. Like, she's constantly calling me, checking on me. She is literally the person I look up to as far as the future of our immediate family, so my parents and my siblings and myself, because she's the one taking care of us. So I relate the blue to her. I also, it's also, I guess this is really cliche, as like blue is often associated with the ocean. So obviously there's that connection with that. So it's like a reminder that my family comes from the ocean. I'm in a landlocked state. I feel like a landlocked island, but the color blue is just a constant reminder that even though I'm here in the States, I'm always connected to something in the islands through my family.
Yeah, I really appreciate the artistic choice you made that was very personal, even though you were sort of depicting the stories of other people. So it's like you still found a way to put yourself,
kind of insert myself a little.
kind of connect yourself to the story of somebody else. So there's definitely some power to that.
Yeah.
So I noticed I saw a Q&A, it disappeared, so maybe not. But I do want to ask, let's see.
I have a comment on, if I can, on
Sure.
Jerry's, Shaun. Hearing Jerry speak about, seeing the work, but also hearing you, Jerry, speak about the curtain as a metaphor for hope in form of opening the window, it's a for me, the curtain, I like that metaphor actually, and the transparency of a curtain, something that sheds light, but in a very softened way. So there is a level of comfort also associated with that, especially because I know, Jerry, you talk about resolution, which is amazing. You find these images all over, and it's like, and there is some power in low resolution when it comes to democracy. There is, because not everything has to be high resolution. And actually, artist Hito Sterl talks about that very, very important moment of dissemination of images post the fall of Berlin Wall, and especially in the countries such as Serbia and Bosnia, and just traveling of images. But I look at the curtain and I think about the curtain as a screen as well, and as a way to talk about projecting history, or revisiting history, or remembering history that is not perfect. And so in your drawings, I wonder if, I guess how does your drawing relate to memory, or so there's something about that out of focusness of your images that are low resolution that to me at least talks about memory, because the memory is never really perfect. For me, it's a folded curtain, but for you, it's this these curtains are very soft and not sharp, not clear, and it could be the memory of a place that you cannot remember because it was so long ago, but the place that you maybe know only through the rituals of family meals, or
yeah. So good question. So when I make work about my family, it's all stemming from my memories, and I can't say my memories are photographic. I'm obviously missing a lot of details when it comes to them. I remember the big things, general events, people's names, but not specifically what they're wearing or anything like that. So there's a level of like inconsistency sometimes when I'm recalling something that that I thought that I knew very well. But after collecting family photographs, like all of those photographs are low resolution as well. They're fuzzy. So having to render from something fuzzy, like there's obviously, I can't make it a crisp rendering. Like I don't think that would be me making things up, details that don't exist to present something cleaner. But memory isn't clean. It's rather messy. And I think that's part of why I feel there's this inner dialogue of what to be, what not to be. Because I have memories of Palau, but they're like 30 years old, over 30 years old. A lot of things that I remember probably don't exist anymore, or the people that I met probably have passed already. So I'm trying to, in my work, I wouldn't say create an archive. Like the most recent body of work are ink drawings, family photographs that I've been collecting, and those are all like generalized from those photographs. Like there's specific details in the photographs, but some of them I don't remember ever experiencing, or they happened before my time, and my parents are having the same thing. They sort of remember when they happened. So there's always this like weird fuzziness in the discussions about those photographs that I think translate as in my drawings as the fuzziness or the low resolution. Like I would love to be someone who highly renders these beautifully immaculate, clean images, but like I as a person, I don't think I am that person. So I can't push my drawings to be something that I'm not as well. So I guess they're more of a reflection of me as a person too. I'm refining myself as every day goes by, or trying to.
Thank you, Jerry. So we've gotten a request.
Yeah.
We can not share your screen right now, so we can all see each other a little better.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Better?
Right. Yeah, that's
Oh yeah, I can see everyone.
thank you. That was from Rosemary. So Vesna, I wanted to come back to you and ask you, now as a citizen of the United States, you kind of see us here at this moment where people have taken to the streets in protests, protesting the treatment of marginalized people recently, but historically as well. And I just wonder what kind of, how your experiences in Serbia maybe provide a perspective for what's taking place here now. Oh, you're still muted.
Oh.
Well, it definitely is not a great moment when we consider all the crises that we're going through right now, both the medical crises, the crisis of the democracy, the crisis of the racial issues. And there is almost seems like a moment of great reckoning for on the individual level, on the societal level, and definitely a moment where the theme of your show, Jerry, and the exhibition programming, the importance of voting comes into place. And the importance of, I have voted so many times in former Yugoslavia, because there was so many different, it's not a two-party system, it's a multi-party system. And so there was so many coalitions, so many different oppositional parties and so on. And I remember sort of thinking that oftentimes, like, you know, do I go out to vote? Does it matter? And it did matter, and it was a moment of great importance when the elections, that we thought that the elections were not that were stolen, or that there was a fraud, election fraud, that we took it to the streets. And actually it was a student protest of the 96, 97 that really showed me, and I participated, and also as a photographer, but as a student, as a citizen in Serbia. And we marched in the streets of Belgrade, and that's where that image, Beograd je svet, which means Belgrade is the world, comes from. We've marched for 4 months, consecutive winter months. So artists were doing artist actions. The performers were performing in front of the police cordons, and we were spending nights, and we're making noises, and doing all the things that protesters do. But there was a moment of persistence, and so there was a moment of length, and a moment of really not knowing when it would end, but you would just be there. And so it seems to me that the protest here evolves in a different way, and only recently, after the killing of George Floyd, actually it started to happen in a prolonged way and an important way to really make a difference. And so I think that this is the first time that I've noticed really this persistent, ongoing protest, which is long overdue. And so for me, understanding that it's a path that you take, and that path is not a short path, and there is no, you know, we want to know what is the end sight, and we want a more just society and a better society, and hence the voting processes comes to place, and the importance of just going to vote. And so I think that for me, individually, I feel, as someone who, hearing also Jerry speak about this being between the two countries and so on, you know, I constantly feel, and I'm going to use this word, that actually is a word coined by a prominent Serbian writer, David al-Bahari, who emigrated to Canada actually in the 1990s. He's a world-known writer. He coined the word apatrid, so which is a patriot. So it's like it's sort of belonging but not belonging between the two countries, like, and kind of understanding, like, what is this identity that I take from there, and what is the identity that I get here, and how do these different identities define me, and for both me and Jerry, it's the artistic process that translates that, and so I look into different histories as an artist. I looked into the history of former Yugoslavia, and me being there, as Jerry is looking at as his story, and family history, being from Palau, and I am kind of constantly aware of these different histories that we intersect together, living here in the South, and so I ask myself often these questions of how to responsibly think and reflect on these histories, as someone who comes from elsewhere but is here. So it's apatrid is a word that does not have a negative connotation, but it has a sense of loss in it. It has a sense of loss of something that is gone, and something that you know, appears in a kind of funny naturalization ceremony sign in a courtroom in Nashville next to the Frist, where you know, it was a unique moment of getting up amongst 60 of us, when immigrants did not feel welcome, really, at that moment in the country, and the stories of the wall were erected by the current administration. and then there was 60 of us out of 40 different countries from the world being naturalized that very day and standing up and saying. And so those moments are really nice reminders of the world that we live in, and definitely those boundaries that are artificial and that are kind of set up in a way that sometimes does not feel most natural. So anyway, that, yeah.
We have about 6 minutes left, and I had a couple more questions. I wanted to, and it doesn't look like we have any Q&A. So first, Jerry, I just wanted to ask you, what have you learned through this process? What have you learned about yourself and just your conversations, not only with Vesna, but with the other people you talk to as well?
I learned that, and I guess this is obvious, but I never gave it a thought, but people have different motivations for voting, and their reasons, even though they're different, are not unequal. They're all pretty on the equal as an importance. And that just made me think that my reasons for voting are just as important, and that makes my vote equally as important, which makes my voice equally as important as others, which enforces that voting is the basic, powerful way to use your voice. So I'm looking forward to this next election. I'm going to be casting my vote with a big, huge smile on my face, because I'm taking part in the process.
Great. That actually leads me to my last question, which this is open to Jerry or Vesna. So during your conversation, Vesna, you mentioned, or you described your naturalization ceremony as having an atmosphere of hope. So I guess my question for that would be, during this challenging time that we kind of spoke about, it's easy to lose some of that or to question some of that hope. How do you maintain your faith in the process, or do you maintain it? Are you as hopeful as you were that day? And I'll start with Vesna.
Mm-hmm. So I am always hopeful, and always trying to remain optimistic, and it will be my first presidential election that I can vote on. And and I'm excited. I'm always excited when I can cast my vote. I tend to support women and minorities on any ballot, even when I not always don't know about all the histories. I look at Nashville scene for the guide often, and to break down what's happening in the city. I think that there is there is a voting is a very intimate process, and I think, but it's an intimate process, but it's also you can make a difference with that, a real difference, and I think what we are experiencing now, and the way how things, we're not able to really enjoy like large setting conventions, and I remembered actually last fall and sort of watching and thinking about the Democratic sort of a presidential campaign and all the candidates, and and it was sort of, it all seems like a big blur now. Now you see that candidate say something about COVID-19, or so it's like, oh, there's you, and so anyway, I think I get excited about the voting process. I think it matters. I get passionate about it, and so yeah, I think that we are in a moment in time where it's extremely important to vote, and to cast, or to reestablish somewhat the future of the country.
And Jerry, you're going to cast your vote with a smile on your face. So
I am.
Yeah.
It's important, and I'm one of the American citizens who, when they turned 18, voted for their first time. But then, for most of those years since then, I've only voted in the presidential election. Like, this is like the first time that I'm like researching local politics and taking part in the local elections. So I feel like I've grown because of this project, and talking with Vesna and Sophia and John and Jake, and learning their perspectives on what motivates them to vote. That being informed is important, and with the pandemic and the social unrest that's going on now, like, I felt emotionally drained from all of that up until this last weekend. But the idea of not voting never crossed my mind. Like, I applied and got an absentee ballot for the local election. I just submitted that. So popped that stamp on, threw it in the mail. And I'm like, yes, that's one positive thing that I can do right now to help change the future for something that I hope would be something better than what we're living in. And just the possibility is always in flux, and if you don't vote, then you are essentially not voting. You're voting for no change at all. So vote. So if you want change, future is change. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess we're out of time now, but I want to thank you both for bringing your perspectives and your experiences. Thank you, Jerry, for kind of taking us through this process and what it meant to you, and Vesna for sort of bringing your life story to us and sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. And I guess I will turn it over to Megan.
Thank you so much, Shaun. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Vesna. This was an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed hearing your perspectives, and to learn more about the works in We Count First-Time Voters, which you can see at the Frist. We are reopened, and you can reserve your timed ticket at fristartmuseum.org. We hope you will come see us soon, and come see We Count when it opens next week. And as always, you can find out more about our events on our website. You can sign up for our weekly email newsletter, or you can follow us on social media, and we hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.